We could talk about the Matrix to start.
Well, what's your definition of matrix? I want to hear what you have to say about it.
How I choose to understand it is the Matrix is your own personal cage of what you decide to be. So, like anything can be a matrix. And we'll get all the people that are all into words that know all the deeper language and the definitions of each word. And so, matrix actually means a womb, so to hold or like contain something. And so, that's kind of how I look at it. It's like the matrix is whatever is holding you back from being your higher self, you know?
Hmm.
And it's not the shadow government or the elites or any of this weird shit. That's actually like a very superficial matrix and one of the most boring
That's
matrices too.
that's a good point. I made a video about this a couple months back where I was basically talking about that. Like, I can't remember exactly what I said in that video, but I do feel like the majority of our limitations are self-imposed, and it's kind of just the limitations that you put on yourself, basically. Because if you think about it, like, I mean, there's always been fucking government regulation. There's always been power differences, but I feel like now a lot of people to blame the Matrix on shit, or the Matrix as they define it as like cancel culture, basically. When I don't know, a lot of shit is just self-imposed.
I mean, half of it's self-imposed, man. It's kind of funny, because I'm from a small town in the middle of Minnesota, and it's like the poorest county in the entire, or like second poorest. And so we always hear, growing up, all these different things about the outer world. When you're from a small town, it's definitely kind of has that dystopian vibe where no one wants to leave. The world out there is big and scary. They can get you or whatever, government. And so there's this sense to hunker down. And as soon as I start to explore the world and kind of go to different states, and especially when you go down south like you did, you just find there's a whole new world than, let's say, like the Midwest. And I think just for me, when I started to crack my matrix, was just to put myself in a different position in the world. And so much shit just kind of falls away when you do that. I think you've had a similar feeling, right?
Definitely. So before I get into that, what was Minnesota like for you? Like, in what ways did you feel like a lot of people there had self-imposed limitations?
Well, I mean, the Midwest, particularly Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, any of these things, there's this sense of apathy and kind of guilt ridden shame that is like a haze over top of the entire environment. It's very deeply religious too. And it's cold like 8 months out of the year. And so there's this sense to it like we all got to hunker down and we're in this together and we got to fight for each other. And that just really starts to preliminate into every fabric of yourself. And so by the time I was 18, I was like, get this the fuck away from me. I'm just gonna move to where it's hot. And so many of my issues that I thought were mine and all this like, holy shit, my family, my trauma, oh my God, I'm like fucked in some way. It literally all went away when I just got closer to the sun. Amazing.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Gotta get
I
close to
definitely
the Son of
noticed.
God.
What'd you say?
You gotta get close to the Son of God. He'll save you.
Yes, sir.
Except they think it's a man up
Definitely.
there.
I definitely feel like literally the weather definitely has a big impact on my mood. But moving from, I'm from the Midwest, so I'm from Chicago, and I'm from the South Side of Chicago, which is, you know, predominantly African American, but there's little pockets where it's very ethnic. You have Polish neighborhoods, you have Irish neighborhoods. I grew up in an Irish neighborhood where the majority of people had been there for generations. Their parents grew up there, and maybe their parents grew up there, all Irish people. Heavy drinking culture, heavy blue collar work vibes. Everybody is a firefighter or a cop. My dad is a firefighter. My uncle is a cop. My other uncle is an electrician. So it's just like a lot of people are doing the same shit. And I felt like I bought into it for a really long time. Like, this is what's honorable. I need to work hard like my dad does. My dad has two jobs, been working his life away for the better part of 30 years. And that's a whole nother story I can get into. But I bought into it for a really long time. And then I realized like me buying into this is the exact reason that I can't level up. And especially getting into the content creation, it's been like, it's been really eye opening for me because I'm somebody that never thought I would put myself out there for a really long period of time. I never thought I would put myself out there on the internet. Didn't post on Instagram for 5 years because I felt like it's almost like showing off. But I'm at the point now where I don't even fucking care. So I think starting the YouTube and starting the Instagram is part of what drove me to Texas. And since I've been here, you know, in Austin, it's a completely different vibe because Austin is basically the new LA, you know, a
Is that where
shittier
you are
version of it
now?
probably. Yeah, Austin.
I thought you were in some other part of Texas for a reason. You did. You've always been in Austin, right?
Right.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty wild, man. And I don't know, when I think about it, it truly is like your location. Someone left a video or left a comment on one of my videos saying if you just change your location, you'd be surprised how much life changes for you. And that's definitely been true for me. Almost think I'm addicted to changing my location now. Because every year in this past like 10 years of my life, I've been here, 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 here. Every year I change. And I think it's important, especially when you have that traveler mentality. I
Mhm.
don't know why I didn't think,
Yeah.
I thought you were in some other part of Texas for some reason, like Houston or something. I don't know.
Nah, Houston looks dope, but Austin was just it's the first place I noticed. So I moved down here.
It's funny, I was recently, talking about perhaps moving somewhere to Texas because I really liked Galveston area. And so I guess we'll see like in a year or so if that ends up panning out. I mean, just have good
Okay.
feelings about that spot. So California's been cool, but I don't know. There's too many crazy people here.
I feel you. You're in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, well, I'm lucky because I'm in more of the suburbs, so I'm not like deep in the city. So it's more like just
Hmm.
tech culture. But yeah,
I feel you.
I don't know. It's a life is always offering you opportunities to change and grow, and I mean they're always happening. And I just try to think how, like, where does the universe, not to sound all weird or whatever, but where does the universe want to take me? And the more you're able to just like figure that out, so many of the problems that we think that we have just kind of go away. How we think it all is like, it's all on me. I got to figure it out. It's just me. There is this sense you do have to kind of let go of me to get to somewhere else. And I think we're all trying to figure
I
that
like
out.
I like that. I think and I literally just put out a video on this right before we got live. It's called Life is About Change. And
Oh,
pretty much what I talked about in that video is like you just said, like um a lot of times we think we're being real or we think we're being authentic to ourselves, but really that's just us trying to fit into a particular identity, I guess. And I kind of lost where I was going with that, but I think our identities are kind of fluid. Like I do think we all have shit that's innate to us, but I don't know. Sometimes you got to get out of your environment to discover who you really are.
I mean, it's totally necessary, man. It's been the number one thing I think that has helped me the most. Because, I'm about to go back to my hometown, here pretty shortly. And every single person that I go back and meet, they're all going to be the same exact person they were from when I first left there 10 years ago. And it's like, what happened? And I often think, what is that key fundamental difference that makes a person like change over time? or stay the same. You obviously have to have the desire to change, but also I really think it's just changing where you are. Just like go somewhere different. And oh, there's like new parts of me that come out now. Meet different people, talk to businessmen. Now you're starting to think about business. Talk to homeless people. Now you're thinking about, oh, I could shit. Half of the world is almost in that same position, and in like 2 weeks if they don't get paid. Talk to another person. I mean, the more you just kind of wander around and have new experiences, those form those imprints into you to kind of figure out who you are. And
Mhm.
I don't know, like for the journey of my whole life was all about trying to discover who I am. But it was just within my own personal matrix of like what I want to allow in that's comfortable to me. How can I like form myself in a protective way so I get some good experiences but hold on to what I got? I think that you just gotta blast it all open. You kind of do have to be real, cut all the shit from you and just go out in the world and just like let yourself, get tossed around for a while, and that helps. That helped me a lot.
Mhm.
Like,
So I know you, I think I was watching one of your videos where you said you were like you're Native American and you were adopted,
yeah,
and you were saying like it's kind of hard to identify what your generational curses are, so to speak, when you're adopted because there's like a cut in the bloodline. And I know you said you're addicted to change as well. So what do you feel like was that the moment for you that you feel like set it off to where now it's like you can kind of see through things, or what do you think it was for you?
well, I mean, to be honest with you, I've always seen through things. I think that, growing up, I had a lot of traumatic experiences. Even like to even get more real here, a lot of like sexual experiences when I was younger with people I probably shouldn't have that were supposed to be close to me. And so I think that my whole radar for how I was kind of interpreting reality just heightened to like 5, 10 levels the amount that it's supposed to be. Like that's just about as real as I could probably be. And so from that, I think I started to scan, okay, what does each person want from me and why? And so that helped me kind of see what is mine and what is actually genuinely a person's, like their own thing. Because so much of the shit that we got going on in ourselves is like stuff that other people put on us that we think is like me, my parents' belief systems, my friend thinks this, my girlfriend is blah, blah, blah. But when you strip away and kind of take all that energy and bring it back to who it came from, I mean, that's a very Native American thing, I guess. I don't study Native American culture, but they're all about like taking all things that's the burden of other people and kind of throwing it back to them. That's always been intuitively with me. And I think that it helps people to kind of do that. But you have to be cold and kind of dark with that. And that's also why I resonate with your recent video on embracing dark energy. Because it's a dark thing to not take on people's burden and to kind of just be like, fuck you, it's yours. Stop interacting with me this way. So, I mean, all these things mesh together, really.
Definitely. Yeah, man. That's interesting. But shit, let's get into that. So what did you resonate with about that video as far as the dark energy? Like what was what's your interpretation of what dark energy is?
Shit, I was just thinking about that in the grocery store. I was getting some water. I was like, what? How do I want to talk about that today? Because there's so many angles that I could go with that. Because ultimately, I think where I've kind of rested now is I don't really know if there's anything that's actually technically dark anymore, right? Because humans, we often want to think that our, like, whatever is unknown to us is dark. Like, imagine closing your eyes or it's nighttime, you're walking into a forest, it's going to be dark. And so we associate things that have an unknown territory as being dark. But I don't think that so many things actually are technically that dark because you can see a level of understanding behind nearly all of it. You can see why people get shot and got murdered and why this thing does this thing over here and people do all sorts of crazy stuff. When you see to how the event actually was created and what initiates it all, you see there's a systematic process for how even dark things happen. It all comes from like trying to resolve the inner feeling of whoever's trying to go through that thing, and that's where they're trying to put their energy onto more and more things to affect more people to avoid it themselves. So if you just kind of take all your own inner darkness, compress it into yourself, it'll like magically turn to light if you go through that process properly. So nothing's dark, man.
Mm.
Nothing's dark. It's just dark if you're afraid of it.
So I'm gonna take it a step back. You were saying you think darkness is when people take their issues and put it onto other people, but darkness can also be used if you basically, instead of projecting it onto other people, you use it on yourself, and then you can create positivity out of that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, basically.
Would there be anything that you would add to that?
Well, I mean, we even talked about it in our last episode how, if you just ran a boot camp and it was all about like just kind of yelling in people's faces and get up and kind of a military style training, I often think about that. That's a form of kind of projecting dark energy onto people who would not be ready. And in going through that process of doing things like that, these extremes, we also feel that as being dark. So anything that is like outside the parameters of our comfort level, we think is dark in some way. And so you can utilize dark energy to kind of manipulate yourself and other people to get them to be better. And so isn't that a form of light? So it's all like everything is everything and you know, it's almost like a concept that doesn't even exist. We just kind of try to frame it as dark and light as a way to conveniently package it. It's almost not even real.
That's an interesting way to put it. The way I was looking at it is darkness is dark energy is basically the stuff that we sweep under the surface, the stuff that society does not allow. And I feel like that's especially prevalent when it comes to masculine dark energy. I feel like the feminine dark energy is something that's a little bit more accepted nowadays, but masculine dark energy, that desire to control, dominate, a lot of times like, we as a society censor men so much. And we really want perfection out of men, like an ideal standard almost. So the way I was looking at it is darkness is kind of what we censor, but that is real. Light is kind of like what's typically accepted. That being said, dark energy can be used for positivity or negativity. Same thing, light energy can be used for positivity or it can be used for negativity.
Yeah, I mean, that's just another angle to it. That's where these ideas compress into one thing. If you have something within you that is unknown to you, or it's a pattern which continues on, but you're unsure as to why, that's a form of darkness because you're in the dark about some aspect of your character or something. And it is true, it's more common to accept female light and dark energy because they're actually like easier to understand because the male dark energy and even like male light energy, males are just not very well understood because we don't really have a framework for understanding them because their actual richness of their own internal expression and how they interact with life in many ways is actually far more complex than females. I often think, and I've really switched my mind around this, where I think that males are probably have a higher tendency to be more deeply spiritually connected than females. It's not popular opinion to say that at all, but I think that there's definitely something that tethers males to the spiritual realm, which would be where that darkness would appear. And when you handle the
What do you
darkness, then you kind of learn how to understand those things more.
why do you think that is that men are more spiritual?
Because men are in reality, man. Women can exist in a complete, total illusion. Not a delulu, not all this kind of weird, I mean, sometimes. But men in particular, they just actually exist within where reality is actually happening. And that's oftentimes why they're so damn depressed, because they don't really know what to do, because they're actually so in reality that that's what everyone else calls upon them to be within. Like, know your role, know your position, do this, do that. You're a man. But with women, it's more like a woman, if she just wears makeup and dresses cute that day and walks around in the store, I mean, shit, she could maybe even have like someone buy all of her stuff for her that day. I mean, this happens all the time. Or just like step in line and pay for her stuff, or just put on some makeup, and you can just kind of manipulate the world around you for good for yourself, which is fine. It's kind of the role. But men, we don't have any of these like superficial powers. In many ways, men who try to cultivate it, we just get shamed even more. So men have to
I
be in reality.
I agree with that. That takes me back to I was on this date with this girl back in I don't know, maybe June of last year, and she told me she was spiritual, and I was
Uh
thinking I remember
oh.
we. So you know when she tells you that she's spiritual, she's the exact opposite. Um,
99% of the time.
yeah, yeah, I would say the majority of the time. In this case, definitely because leading up to that date, I had seen her, like, we had set up the date. She rescheduled on me. And usually that's a big no no when they reschedule last minute. But I saw she was like, oh, I have a plane flight. And she like screenshotted it and showed it to me. I'm like, oh, that's valid. But then I see her on her Instagram and she's like at EDC shaking ass. She's with other guys. I'm like, oh, brother. So when I show up to the date, I'm like, I already know what type of time this is. Like I'm here for one reason, she's here for one reason. And so I'm like, okay. But she starts trying to get deep with me and starts bringing out like all her childhood trauma. And I think the reason that she did that is because she had been scoping out my YouTube and probably watched some of my videos. And so she does this and then kind of, it put me in an awkward position where I almost felt like I had to do the same. I had to reciprocate with her and tell her like a little bit about what had gone on in my life because I saw some similarities and now I felt awkward. So I did. As soon as I let it out a little bit, all interest was lost. And that showed me like that set me off because it was like, wow, like that's really how superficial women can be sometimes. Like they're really trying to test you sometimes. And I'm not saying this is all women, but a lot of women will try and test you to see whether you're like emotional and whether you're going to let that side of yourself out.
Yeah, man. I mean, I have a number of stories that are of a very similar nature like that. And that's truly what goes on, man. They utilize their kind of empathetic powers to get into like a superposition over top of you, so they can analyze you to see like, do you deserve me? But because they're unwilling to actually accept a man into their lives, they don't really want to actually meet their initial goal of seeing if this man is worthy. So they just kind of want to put that power and dominant over to her, like, no, you don't deserve me. So they kind of have to pull apart things from within you to get you to display to her, to balance the interaction, all while this is happening on like a psychic manipulation level. Spiritual women understand this very well. And most spiritual women only get to that level to where it's always like a man blocking me from the power. It's the colonizers. It's, they used to burn witches. And so now I feel this generational trauma for whatever. And yeah, most spiritual women are like that. That's just what it is, man. So men have to be in
Yeah,
reality.
I agree with that.
And that's why they're so depressed, dude. I mean, what do you do? How do you help men when the world is kind of fucked like that? I don't know. I mean, you're doing it, but I don't know how personally I would, because there's a part of me that tends to think some men are just built for it and they will withstand the change, and some aren't, and natural selection and whatever. Like that's kind of my resting point with a lot of it.
I know. So I know you went. I think you told me this on the last podcast that you were homeless for a period of time. So like, how did you bring yourself out of that?
Well, the number one critical thing that I knew when I was homeless was that I didn't need to be. I had a home I could go back to at any time. I had friends that I could go stay with. I didn't have to sleep in my car. I didn't have to not have a job and kind of be poor or whatever, my early 20s, these things. But I went homeless and slept in my car, sometimes on the street, just to test myself, to kind of bring out those inner demons, which kind of made me like show myself that I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Because I think that so many people are afraid. What my bills don't get paid? What about my job? I'll be on the street. I just kind of thought, and I did this when I was, 18 and a half, 19 years old, when I started my first time going homeless in the middle of, Minnesota, negative 20 degrees in my car, just like, you know, I did this experiment just to see, like, is this what I should be afraid of? Because again, it kind of loops back to the idea everyone's lying to me. Everyone wants something from me. They're telling me stories to get me to think or be a certain way, probably for them. So is homeless a bad thing? Like what do I actually think about being homeless? Let's just try it. And then I tried it's like, oh wow, like I actually feel free because no one's in my ear talking to me about shit. No one's telling me what to do. No one's telling me to get a job. I'm just by myself. I can create my own little world. I can grow, I can evolve, I can go skateboard at 3 a.m. and no one cares. No one's expecting me to go anywhere. It's amazing, man. Everyone should be homeless for a little while. Try to be homeless for a year. Change your life. To anyone who's watching.
That's an interesting take. So like, was it easy for you to get out of that? Because it was kind of part of it was self inflicted, or was it still difficult for you?
It was definitely difficult to get out of because, when you have to start then paying bills and, oh, now I got $1,500 for rent. What the fuck? That would have saved me for like 3 months or more of living, that type of thing. I did have definitely a strong like aversion to wanting to pay rent because half the time we live in our boxes and then we have to go to jobs to then pay for the box that we live in less and less because we work more and more. So it kind of just felt like a waste of money. But I don't know, I just kind of got over it. I mean, it happens somewhere around like 20, 25. Just kind of like, should probably be a normal person because you got to fit in with the world. And if you're too weird and strange, people won't know how to interact with you and life will just kind of get weird.
Definitely. Yeah. And hmm,
There's so many ways to think about the journey of life, man. And to me, it's always been about how can I fill my experience with things that will allow me to grow. This culture is all about making money and, top G, also it's fine, whatever. But e-commerce, merchandise, sell stuff, start a business, hustle, boom, boom. And to me, you find your true freedom when you just like develop your own self intellectually, emotionally to some degree, spiritually. And if you just work and compound those things so hard, other people with money won't even know how to interact with you because you'll be on a way different level. And they'll be trying to get what you want when you have the whole thing that everyone's been looking for this entire time, but they've been trying to buy their way to it. So just because someone's rich or they got money or doesn't mean anything to me. I talk to homeless people every day. See them, like just talk to them because they got more knowledge than most of the people around here in Silicon Valley. Tell you that.